The Gateway is in select theaters and on Apple TV and everywhere you rent movies starting on September 3rd and will be available on Blu-ray and DVD on September 7th and on September 24th. One of my favorite TV shows, Goliath, returns to Amazon Prime for its final season. He will be on that as well. One of the best, Bruce Dern, here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, sir?
Well, first of all, it's a treat for me because I watched you guys for a long, long time.
Thank you.
And a guy, you remember a name, Roger Werner?
No, who's that?
He started ESPN.
Okay.
I went to New Trier High School in Winnetka, Illinois. So did he. And he started a division called Speed Vision.
That's right.
Which they did a lot of all the car racing around the world, the Formula One and everything like that. And Speed Vision then was incorporated into ESPN when they started in 1984, or I don't know what the date was, but
yes.
I thought it was around that. And we did a show called The Lost Drive-In, where we went around to the drive-in theaters in America and showed any sports-related movies that had to do with speed. You know, car racing, plane racing,
sure.
Not track and field, but anything with motors or boats or anything like that. And so we went around and did that. And so I did a lot of motorcycle movies and things like that in the 60s and all. And so they were made for drive-ins, so that was that. But I thought it was a good. And Roger Werner was the guy that started all that, I thought. And then you remember the name Edgar Sherrick?
I'm now batting 0 for 2, which means one more I might make the Hall of Fame still. Though.
No, that's okay. He started Wide Wide World of Sports in '54, and his assistant was Dick Ebersol, who was a Notre Dame freak, if you know what I mean. Couldn't give up Notre Dame. Everything had to be Notre Dame, this or that. But Ebersol then went on to run NBC Sports and put on the Olympics and all that.
Yes,
and married.
Now we're batting
Susan St. James, who was in a television series with Rock Hudson at the time.
Oh yes. So now
anyway,
we're batting 1 for 3. I've heard of him. I've heard of.
That's okay. Do you like sports trivia?
Bruce Dern, go at it. Let's do it. Let's play sports trivia. What do you got for me?
What college has supplied the most starting quarterbacks in the Super Bowl?
Okay. I think I know the answer to this, by the way. This is good. I think I know the answer to this, Bruce Dern. The answer is Cal Berkeley. Did I get it right?
Yes, sirree. And there's 6.
Okay.
And what makes it 6 is a trick. The first is Joe Kapp.
Yep.
The second is Craig Morton, who started for 2 different teams in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Dallas and Denver.
Yep.
And then the fourth, is Vince Ferragamo, who started at Cal, couldn't play behind Bartkowski. So he went to Nebraska and won a national championship. In the 5th or 6th, Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff.
Jared Goff. Isn't that amazing? Cal Berkeley has sent more quarterbacks to the Super Bowl.
You tell people a Pac-10 school, and they start with UCLA. Yeah, we'll get over it. They had 2. And then they go to SC. I mean, they're just people. I'm 85 years old, and I got this down. I spent all my life just loving sports and so forth and so on. And then the other question is, there are 2 questions I had for this. Second question is,
yes, Bruce Dern.
If you consider hitting a major league pitch the hardest thing to do in all of sports, then this is the best world record ever. In 1986, playing third base for the Boston Red Sox, Wade Boggs made 704 plate appearances. He was thrown over 5,200 pitches. He swung and missed making contact with the baseball 27 times.
That's an all-time record right there. No doubt about that, Mr. Wade Boggs.
Of all sports, I mean, maybe 15 rounds of boxing, but I'm a wuss, so I wouldn't know that.
Well,
but I'm just saying that is a record. And people say, well, why did Boggsy get in the first ballot? Excuse me. Just shut the up. I'm sorry. I mean, that's, if that's not as amazing as anybody can do, I don't know what is. That's pretty big stuff.
The great Bruce Dern here on the Rich Eisen Show. I mean, this is it's interesting because we had Pete Rose on a couple years ago, and he was poo-pooing the idea that golfers say hitting a golf ball is the toughest thing ever. He says he always tells golfers, your ball doesn't move, you put it on a tee. He goes, my ball, he had no idea what I was hitting. It's curved ball. He had no idea what was coming. 100 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. It's just tougher to do. There's no question about that, Bruce. No doubt.
But do you remember when John Kruk came up to pinch hit in the All-Star game?
Against Randy Johnson.
And he had to go against Randy Johnson.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
And the first pitch Randy Johnson threw to him, he never saw. The second pitch was right at his head, and he backed out, and it broke over the plate. And the third one would have killed him if it had hit anybody. And when he was called out 3 strikes, he laid his bat on the plate. He took his gloves off. He put his helmet on it. And he turned around to the umpire, and the catcher was the kid from Toronto on that World Championship team. I forget his name.
I think Pat Borders. Pat Borders was his name, I think.
Yeah, Matt, right. Absolutely. Very good.
Yeah,
and he said, it's not fair.
It's not. Bruce Dern here
I love
on
that. And the other
too.
great story I heard,
Yes, Bruce?
I don't mean to take, if I'm boring you, tell me.
No, but I do have some questions for you, though. No doubt about that. I've got some.
Last one.
Let's go for it.
When they tore up the parquet in the Boston Garden.
Yes, sir.
That night, Red Auerbach was there, and he was sitting behind him with Havlicek and Casey Jones. And a guy in a business suit walked across the now empty floor. All the people were gone. The stadium was full. Everybody had their piece of parquet. And he walked up to Red Auerbach, and he bent down, and he put a piece of parquet in his hand. And he said, Coach, I don't see that you have a piece. You have to have a piece. Because you built the building. And he put it in his lap, and Auerbach says, no, that's for you people. And the guy just turned around, having left a piece in Red's lap, and walked across the arena and out. And Havlicek came down and said, Red, he said, what? He said, what did Derek Sanderson just say to you? How about that? Talk about who built the garden.
I got Bruce Dern here.
Isn't that a great story?
It is a great story. It is a great story. You must have, I got so many questions for you, but I only have a limited amount of time.
Go ahead, do your thing.
No, here you go. Bruce Dern here on the Rich Eisen Show. His new movie, The Gateway, is available tomorrow, September 3rd, on Apple TV, select theaters, and everywhere you rent movies. Blu-ray and DVD on September 7th. Normally what I do, back in the day, you were on my podcast, and I could talk to you for about an hour, and it was fantastic. And you told some great stories from back in the day and the current day. But what I like to do is play Celebrity True or False with somebody, go through their career as best I can, and you tell me what's true or what's not about what's written about your career. Can you do that, Bruce?
Okay.
All right, here we go. If we got it, here's some production value for Bruce Dern here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hit it.
Celebrity True or False?
You can't handle the truth.
All right, here's your first question, Bruce Dern. Your first question. You were part of the Actors Studio in New York City when Marilyn Monroe was there in the late 50s. Is that true or false?
True.
What was that like?
Late 50s and early 60 and 61, yeah.
Who was there? What was that like?
61.
What was that like?
Well, first of all, she was there to observe because her private teacher was Lee Strasberg. And he wanted her to come to the studio to see the kind of acting work that we were all working on to help her with hers, rather than to make her get up and perform in front of us, because in the actor's studio, after you do your little 10-minute scene, whatever it is, everybody in the class gets to raise their hand and say what kind of work they just saw from that actor or actress. And then Mr. Strasberg sums it up, and he did not want to put her through that. So that's why she was there.
Is that right? Okay. And who else was there with you back in the day that you were working on and becoming actors? And
well, they all went to, there were a bunch of, excuse the expression, Guidos, but I mean, there were a bunch of Italian guys that were all in a movie called Hatful of Rain.
Okay.
And it was Tony Franciosa, it was Ben Gazzara, it was Harry Gardino.
Sure.
And it was a huge hit on Broadway, and then they made it as a movie. And all those guys became instant movie stars. And then they did a play off Broadway, and the play was called End as a Man. And Ben Gazzara was the star of that, and George Papard was in that, Paul Newman was in that, and this is in the mid-'50s. And I didn't come in until 58, and so I wasn't there. But that was the other play that sent, and they didn't have to do a lot. I mean, Paul Newman, my first play second play on Broadway was with Paul Newman and Geraldine Page. It was called Sweet Bird of Youth. It was a Tennessee Williams play.
Wow.
And I began my career under contract to Mr. Kazan. And he had 5 of us. He had Rip Torn, Pat Hingle, Geraldine Page, Brucey from Winnetka, and Lee Remick. And those were the 5 that were under contract. So I was very lucky that I got to start there. And the big thing about us is when I came to Hollywood after 3.5 years in New York on Broadway and driving a friggin' cab and everything, I came out here and my generation got the chance to still work with the legends. Nowadays, they give us awards. I mean, Clint gets them, Jack gets them, I get them, Redford, whoever they are, get legendary awards and all this kind of promotion. We're not legends. You can't be a legend. Everybody knows what the hell we do after school. So how the hell can you be private or anything like that? But these people were private, which enabled them to be bigger than life.
Bruce Dern, or Brucey
and when I went to kill John Wayne and the Cowboys, he'd never been killed in a movie, they were putting bullet hits on him. You know what bullet hits are, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that was my next question for you, Brucey from Winnetka, as you refer to yourself. True or false, did you receive death threats after you shot John Wayne's character in the back in the Cowboys? So that's a true story? That you got death threats?
To this last weekend.
Come on!
And we made that movie in 71, so you're talking 50 years ago. He said to me while they were putting these bullet hits on him, "Oh, they're gonna hate you for this." And I said, maybe. But in Berkeley, I'm a friggin' hero. And he laughed. He put his arm on my shoulder and he said, "That's why this is in my movie. Because he understands that bad guys were funny. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about them 150 years later."
So you, Bruce Dern, just recently got a death threat because you killed John Wayne's character in a movie 50 years ago. That just happened. That's true.
Yeah, to my face.
What?
I did a collectible show.
Yeah.
And a guy came up to me who was maybe, a memorabilia card collector guy, and he said, I really, back in the 70s, you killed my buddy. And I said, really? Who was that? He said, John. I said, hey, bud, he died of cancer. Get over it. It was a movie. And he said, no, you killed my buddy, and if I had seen you in person then, I'd have ripped you a new one. Well, you wouldn't have been the first.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was And he was great. You know the great thing, Rich, about those people?
What is it, Bruce?
They always were fabulous to my generation of young actors, particularly, because they saw us doing stuff they could never get to in their careers because they were in the contract system. They were under contract to studios, and the studios always wanted to play themselves again and again and again, which made movie stars. And they were bigger in life. And every one of them that ever helped me, you go back and you look at certain movies that they were in, and they say, well, but John Wayne was John Wayne. No. Go back and look at The Quiet Man. Go back and look at True Grit.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, look at the things that every one of them the same way. And they were very helpful to us for two reasons. One is they weren't able to do what they saw we could do. And second of all, they encouraged us to go to the edge of the bluff and take risks.
I got Bruce Dern here.
When I worked with Robert Mitchum, for example, we made a sports movie called That Championship Season.
Of course.
Did you ever see it?
Of course, Bruce. Of course.
And it's a good movie. And it really happened. Because in 1956, Scranton Central, which was that high school, upset Overbrook because they played four corners and could stall. And their center that jumped up at the center, remember the priest said to our center, break his nose. That center was George Raveling.
Really? George Raveling.
Yeah.
I love these stories. Bruce Dern here, Celebrity True or False. Next one, the film Black Sunday was filmed during the actual Super Bowl X matchup between the Steelers and Cowboys in the Orange Bowl. Is that true or false?
True.
Were you there that day? Were you there that day as well? Did you get to meet Chuck Noll and Lynn Swann?
I wasn't there the day.
Right.
Because what they did on the day was they hired the 7 best cameramen in the world. Mm-hmm. And each one had an assignment. Cover Staubach, cover the crowd, cover the cheerleaders, cover the announcers. Some are all in,
Brookshire.
Tom Brookshire.
Right.
And so each one had, so they put that all together. Now, we went back there 2 weeks later.
The Orange Bowl. Yeah.
To do the ending of the movie. Because what happened was, when the movie ended, it ended exactly like the cover of the book. Mm-hmm. When Robert Shaw is on his way in the helicopter to pull me and Marta Keller out of the sky with the blimp, mm-hmm. On the way, as we approach the sky, if you remember the cover of the book, the picture is a shadow comes over the stadium, and it's a sunny day. And the shadow comes over the stadium, and all the people look to see the shadow, and it's the blimp starting to crush the light standards above the stadium. And that's the end. And it said, Black Sunday, think about it. Paramount went nuts when they saw it. And they said, you can't end the movie like that. The Jewish guy's got to win. He's got to win. Because Charles Bluedorn was the head of Paramount at the time, and they didn't think it was appropriate. So he had to go back and shoot a Shaw coming and dragging it out over the ocean so all the darts went into the ocean. But I'll tell you something, Rich. It's the only movie that I've ever made that I would never make again.
Right.
And the reason being, someone could do that.
I hear you. Wow.
Why give it an idea?
Why?
A blimp can only go 60 knots, and it can't go above 4,200 feet. So if you can get it off the ground and arm it, you're on your way. I thought it was a good movie. I've been a sports fan, but I'm not an autograph person because I admire too much. I know I went to for a while, my daughter Laura was married to Ben Harper, and the singer. And Ben Harper was an avid Laker fan and a Kobe fan, and Kobe loved all his music and everything. And so we went to a game, and the Lakers were in a playoff game against Portland. And Ben, for some reason, started booing Rasheed Wallace. And I just turned to him. We were together, Laura, me and him, at the game. And I said, you know something? I've never booed anyone in my life. And he said, but Mr. D, he's the enemy. I said, Ben, it's a game. And he's doing something I can't do. And he got it.
Bruce Dern here on the Rich Eisen Show. I got one last one for you, Bruce. Here's the last one for you.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, last one for you. This has nothing to do with entertainment, but is it true or false that Eleanor Roosevelt was a babysitter of yours? Is that true?
My grandfather, Dern, was Secretary of War. He died the week I was born. When I was 3 years old, or 2 years old, I was out at Highwood where their home is, the summer home. People don't know much about it, but the Roosevelts had. And I was 9 in 1944, and we stayed 2 days at that house. My grandfather's already dead 8 years, but my father, my godfather was Adlai Stevenson, and my father and him were law partners at Sidley and Austin in Chicago. And so my dad's dad was the one who was Secretary of War. And so we went there, and when we went there, she invited us, and he was on his way to Yalta to that big conference he had with Churchill, Stalin, him, and Charles de Gaulle. And so I rode my bike that afternoon, and I hit a tree, and I had a concussion. And in those days, when you had a concussion, they just strapped your head with a big rubber strap so you couldn't move it up or down or sideways or anything. And when I kind of came to, maybe for the first time I realized something, which is now maybe 6 hours after I whacked my head on my bicycle, I looked over to the side and was kind of bleary-eyed, and I saw this lady with, didn't see a lady, I could just see the knees, and I looked above the knees, and there was a glasses and a lap, and in the lap was a book, and the glass and the lap were in the book, and I looked all the way up, and it was Eleanor Roosevelt, and she was watching me while my parents were somewhere else.
Wow! So you're the only one, Bruce Dern, that
She's not a grandmother, no.
No, so but you're
I did have like my godfather ran for president twice. My uncle is Archibald McLeish. My middle name is McLeish, Bruce McLeish Dern, and he was a poet laureate and won 5 Pulitzer Prizes as a poet. And my grandmother's roommate, my grandmother McLeish's roommate at Wellesley, was an 18-year-old Madame Chiang Kai-shek. And when I wrote a book in 2007, I wrote a book called Things I've Said But Probably Shouldn't Have. And it did really well. You can get it on Amazon or anything else. That summer of 2007. But in it, I'll leave you with this. Laura, myself, and her mother, Diane Ladd, are the only family in the history of Hollywood that all of us have stars on Hollywood Boulevard. Other families, plenty of them, but never mother, father, child.
That's amazing.
Bill Garcetti, who was the guy that presented us our awards that day, here's your Star of Fame, so forth and so on. He says, what does all this mean to you, today and everything? What special connotation all does it have? And I said, well, I'll tell you what it means. It means to me that a bunch of folks got together and said Bruce Dern could play. And that's the way I end my book. That's my last line in the book. That's all I hope for out of this. Nobody's better than anybody else. But when they can run around and Kobe this and Kobe that, Oscar retired with a triple-double.
You know what, Bruce?
Not for his career, but I mean, he retired in a season where he had a triple-double.
It's amazing, Bruce. Like again, you're like Bruce Dern. You're like the only guy who could connect FDR, Hitchcock, and Tarantino all in one. It's amazing, man.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say.
Oh, come on.
I'll leave you with one.
Okay.
I'll leave you with the last question, and you can't answer it now. But in Division I college sports, there are 190-something or 171, something like that, Division I teams that compete in basketball.
Yeah.
31 of them have nicknames that do not end in S. What are they?
Oh, my gosh.
And there's 140 all end in S.
Okay. Well, that's how about
And
this?
I'll give you one to begin with.
The Cardinal.
The Stanford Cardinal.
Yeah, the Cardinal. That's a good one. You know, and that's my homework for the next time. But to make sure that there is a next time, I don't want to get your people upset. Do you want to talk about the Gateway before I let you go, Bruce? What you like about
I'll
it?
talk about whatever you want to keep me on for. It's not my time. It's your time. I could talk to you all day. You know why? Because if I have game, what the hell do you guys have there?
We've got.
You have game.
I appreciate that, Bruce. We've all got game. What do you like about the Gateway that's available everywhere you rent movies, Apple TV and select theaters on September 3rd?
What I like about it is, first way, the Gateway stands for St. Louis. And that's the Gateway, the big archway there. And so the movie takes place in St. Louis in like the mid-'80s. And a guy is a social worker who just got out of jail about 5 years earlier and has been a social worker, and that's the guy Shea Wiggum plays. And he has a wife and a daughter, 10, and a father. And I'm his father. And the bad guys are after him to commit one more big crime since he's been out with them. And I try and convince my son it's okay not to go back there. I was there. He was there. Mm-hmm. And that's what the movie's about. And he gives up his life, literally, to save me and his daughter and his wife.
And again, that's available on Blu-ray and available on Blu-ray and DVD September 7th.
Wonderful movie. And then we finished. This Goliath will be on the 24th of September.
I can't wait.
And one thing they're doing good this year, they're giving you all 8 episodes the first day. In other words, you could binge watch the whole series in one day, the 24th of September, if you were crazy enough, or bored enough. But the point is that it's really good. And then this, do you watch it?
I do. I can't get enough of it. We've had Billy Bob on many times to promote it. I can't get enough of it.
He's the best.
I can't get enough of it, Bruce.
He gave me as a gift. He gave me a baseball bat signed to me by Stan Musial. And on the bat it says, "To Bruce, from a great fan, Stan Musial." That's the only relic I have.
No.
Except that, and I have a baseball signed by Dave Dravecki. And
okay.
that they say that in the stadium that day you could hear the crack when he threw the pitch.
Oh my gosh!
You never heard that?
I have heard that. I just didn't. I didn't know you had a Dave Dravecki baseball. But Billy Bob, he played. I think he tried to make the Royals once. He told a story like he's tried.
The Cardinals.
The Cardinals. Okay, I knew it was Missouri based. So I guess one last one before you go, Bruce. Do you have a good Tarantino story? Give me your favorite Quentin Tarantino story. I'm such a diehard fan of his, and obviously you're so terrific in his films. You got a good Tarantino story?
Okay, I'll give you one.
Go for it.
I'd never met him until a month before he went to do Django.
Okay.
And he called me up and he said, "Look, you're the icon of your generation. You don't get credit for it yet." I had not done Nebraska when he called me.
Okay.
And so he said, "So I have to have you in my movie. I don't have a role for you. If you came down here for a day and I wrote a scene for you, would you do it? In New Orleans, they were shooting in New Orleans. I said, sure. So I did that. Then we go to the Hateful Eight, which we shot 1,400 feet, 1,400 feet above Telluride, Colorado, which is 8,900 feet. So we were 10,500 feet. And we started in October and finished in June. 161 shooting days. And what happened was, when Sam Jackson gets to all the stuff where he's telling me about what he did to my son, and you're watching it on the screen and everything like that, he was having to break sentences because he couldn't get his breath. So Quentin disassembles the cabin after 4 months. We had 2 weeks off in March, and we went back to Hollywood. They brought the cabin back to Hollywood, rebuilt it log by log on the set, and that following Monday, we went back to work to do a lot of the interior stuff where all the outside stuff had been done and half of the inside stuff. So we were back there, so it was fine. So we walk on the set the first day, and we all have our wardrobe on, and everybody looked like they'd just gotten done coming back from Alaska or something like that, and all that heavy gear. And we were very hot, and Quentin comes in his car, and he goes under the stage, and he says hi to all of us, and he goes on the stage. And we go on the stage, and the guy has refrigerated the stage in Hollywood to 22 degrees Fahrenheit so he could see our breath. Give me a break. The point is, if we had done it at the altitude, Sam would have been, and everybody else, catching their breath after all these long things, and the audience wouldn't know what the hell it was about.
Right.
So he saw our breath there, so he wanted to see our breath. That's a Quentin story. The other Quentin story is, I've been able to work in my life, I feel blessed enough, that I was able to work with 6 directing geniuses, and not in order of importance, but just they are Mr. Kazan, Mr. Hitchcock, a kid named Douglas Trumbull, who directed a movie I did called Silent Running, which is about my companions in space. And then he also directed Brainstorm, the movie which Natalie Wood passed away on. But when he was 19 years old, he won the Academy Award for Special Effects as a senior in Huntington Edison High School down here in Orange County for 2001. At 19, he did that's why he's a genius. And the other 3 are Francis Coppola, Quentin Tarantino, and Alexander Payne, who directed Nebraska. And the reason I call them geniuses, and other guys, I'm leaving out Hal Ashby, I'm leaving out John Frankenheimer, I'm leaving out, a lot of really outstanding directors, is what makes them geniuses is their approachability on a set. Every single member of the crew, from the honey wagon to the grips to the guys up in the loft with the following spots, anybody is invited at any time to walk up to any one of those directors and say, "Sir, what is my exact job in this shot?" And they'll tell you gladly, because they're all professors. You know what I mean? I mean, they don't have the credentials, but they got the credentials for us. And when people say to me and to Jack and Dennis Hopper, when we were all coming up doing all those biker movies, none of you guys finished college. I went to Penn for 2 years and quit. Jack never went. Redford went for a week at Colorado. Clint never went. Burt did go, Burt Reynolds, because he was the first quarterback to take Florida State to a bowl game. Mm-hmm. You know that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, all of these guys, but you know where we did go? We went to the University of Corman, because Roger Corman made movies all through the late 50s and 60s $300,000 in 10 days, and every actor who was one of the stars of it had to do a job behind the camera as well as his acting job. So we learned how to make the movies they're getting back to making now. The Gateway was made for like $1,200,000. And when we did Nebraska, the big fight with Paramount for Alexander Payne was they did not want to make it in black and white. Mm-hmm. They said in Europe there's no resale value in black and white. It has to be color. And I asked Brad Gray, who was running the studio at the time, he's passed now, I said, well, I don't understand. Why are you nixing the black and white? He said, because who's going to give a damn about some old drunk geezer with a dream from a flyover state? And I said, wait a second. He said, we don't do business in those states. I said, well, how many states are flyover states, Brad? He said 9. The Dakotas, Montana, Idaho, Utah, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa. They're the flyover states. And I said, hey, Brad, wait a minute. You're not making the movie because of that? Well, sir, what do you think they call that area of this country? He said, I don't know, bleak, drab, gray. I said, no, sir, they call it the heartland.
Mm-hmm. And now...
And he said to Alexander right then, make your movie, but I'm only going to give you, I'm taking $10 million out of your budget. Well, Alexander and I smile because for $1 million, we made 4 movies with Roger Corman. So we're back to the day where you cut every corner, you broke every rule. I mean, we never had police permits or anything else. We just went and shot it. And the first movie I did for Roger was called The Wild Angels, starred me and Peter Fonda and Nancy Sinatra. And it was a biker movie. You know, we were Hell's Angels.
I love it.
And Jack wrote the script for the next one, which was called The Trip. And it was just an era. And you know what? I remember one time that Ron Howard, I did a movie for him called The Burbs.
Yes.
With Tom Hanks also. It was a very funny movie. It's cute. And in The Burbs, Hanks is a pathetic Cleveland fan. I mean, Cleveland Indian fan. And he grew up in Sacramento, so, I mean, get over it. But, I mean, he's... Anyway, so he's an avid baseball fan like that. But while we were doing the movie, one day he brought 2 guests. Well, one of the 2 guests was Cowboy Joe West, who was his first year as an umpire, and this was 1988. And I forget the other guy he brought with him was a guy who looked just like Steve Garvey, that size, that build, and everything else, and they were the 2 that came together that day. But Joe West is no one to F with, if you know what I mean, on behind the plate or on the thing and everything. So I grew up with an appreciation, and to this day, it's my greatest appreciation. Can I use a swear word or not?
Go for it. Yes.
I really admire people that get done.
So do I, Bruce Dern, and you certainly are one of them too, man. And
well, and you talk to one. Pete Rose got it done. Come on, I can't shake Paul Giamatti's hand.
Even to this,
you know what I mean? I mean, the guy did it. Shut up. The guy did it. He got more hits than anybody for a reason. He could hit. And I'll tell you, I'll leave you. I promise to leave you with this.
Okay.
The greatest quote, Billy Bob took me one time when the Cardinals were here. He's a Cardinal fan. I'm a Dodger fan. So we went to a Cardinal-Dodger game. We were sitting down in the dugout with Hal McRae and, Hal McRae and somebody else. And Hal McRae was a really, really good hitter for Kansas City. When he played, and he was a good player. And he was there, and along came Greg Maddux, who had just come to the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And he was very fond of a couple of movies that I'd done, particularly one I did many, many years ago called They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which was about dance marathons in the 30s. And so we started talking, and I said, can I ask you a question? You know, Billy pitched in high school. He was a very good pitcher in American Legion in high school age. And his dad, Billy's dad, was one of the best high school basketball coaches in America. Through that, I got to meet Nolan Richardson and all of, what's his name, the kid Day on that team, that Arkansas team that won the national championship, and what's his name, Williamson.
Corliss Williamson, yeah. Tom Day.
Corliss Williamson, right. So he said to me, I said, what are the rules in baseball that we don't ever get to know? He said, I'll tell you and Billy one right now. This is Greg Maddux. You cannot make a living in the major leagues throwing strikes. You got to learn to paint the edge. If you throw strikes, they're too good. They'll beat your brains out.
He's the king of that.
And later I got to meet Tom Seaver. He told me the exact same thing, not in the same words. But I just thought from Maddux, because that's what he did. He didn't throw strikes, but you thought they were strikes. That's what makes the Wade Boggs statistic. I mean, he swung, I don't know how many times. He says over about 3,000, and I only missed touching the ball 27. And he wasn't begging to get in the Hall of Fame. He was already in it. But, I mean, I'm knocked out. And I after I wrote that first book, I always wanted to write a book about people that finished second. I've always interested in the people that were right there and didn't quite do it, but were within an eighth of an inch of other people.
Fascinating idea, Bruce. That's a fascinating idea, to say the least. No doubt about that. Hey.
Oh, well, I mean in all walks of life. I mean, sure. The other thing, I remember Kazan took me one day when I was in New York with him, and they were building some, 90-story building or anything. And he said, what's interesting? He says, you love trivia. What's interesting? This is 1959. What's interesting trivia about that building? I said, nothing. He says, anybody on that building that you can see, if you had binoculars, they're just specks to you now, that you can see, above the 20th floor is a Mohawk Indian, because the only ones that'll walk the girders and the beams without any framing are Mohawk Indians. And I love that. And I look for in life things that people don't get. The same way in sports. I mean, to me, the greatest. You remember Bud Greenspan?
Of course.
The guy did all the Olympic films?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Well, he was kind of a friend of mine. And he had a script he wanted me to do about a guy who was 40 years old and was basically not quite as good as Nolan Ryan, but as good. And that winter, he realized he could never pitch anymore. And he had a deal from the Yankees for 2 years, and this is in the 80s, for $20 million.
That's a lot.
To pitch the next season. And the guys debate on whether to take it or honor the sport is what the movie was about. And he ends up not taking it.
Bruce, I appreciate the time, man. This has been a total blast for all of us here on this show. The next, I'd love to get you back and just not even have you on the show, just do a whole podcast chat and just keep going. If you'd be up for that.
Well, I used to do Costas' show one time a year because I was a good runner when I went to college. I mean, a half-miler. I was in the Ivy League. I went to Penn. I only ran like 154 or something like that. But this was when the world record was only 147. Now this prick from Rhodesia, and his name is Rhodesia. He's not called Rhodesia anymore. I guess it's Zimbabwe or whatever it is. But he runs 141.8.
It's amazing.
And talk about not. And the only other time I ever heard like
Jesus
the Kruk
Christ.
quote, "It's not fair,"
Yeah.
is these guys that had to run against Usain Bolt because he's not taking. He does that. And after 40 meters, he just runs off and leaves human beings.
See you later. That's it. The Gateway is in select theaters on Apple TV and everywhere you rent movies tomorrow, and will be available on Blu-ray and DVD on September 7th. And cannot wait to see the final season of Goliath on Amazon Prime Video starting September 24th.
Just to give you a hint, you know who J.K. Simmons is?
Oh, he's in that too?
Yeah. Did you see Whiplash?
Of course.
The drummer kid movie?
Oh, yeah.
That's J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
And the guy that does all the State Farm commercials, that's J.K. Simmons.
He's in that
the bald
too?
guy.
He's in that too?
He and I are brothers. And this season is about we are pharma, and we are still selling an addictive drug and getting away with it. And Billy Bob's firm comes after us. And then will come a story. And that's what our show's about.
I cannot wait for that.
The other thing I will say to you and all the people, I can't believe anybody's still awake listening to all that I come up with. But anyway, it says on the call sheet where we work, to be continued. I'm saying that to you.
Thank you.
To please honor me with calling me back someday on any kind of forum you want. Just a private phone call, just to be on your show or not to be on your show, because there's, I can name some that don't, but you, above everybody else, way back at the very beginning when I started watching you, there are some people in the world that get it. You not only get it, Rich, you get it all. And that's what I love about you, and that's what I love about you guys are trying to do on the air every day. Only you present it and produce it in a way that's palpable to everybody, even the Notre Dame fans.
Bless you, Bruce Dern. You can be sure I will be calling you soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Rich, very much. My honor.
Right back at you. That's Bruce Dern here on The Rich Eisen Show.